Buckle up. It's time for the Champions of Cinema podcast.
Welcome, sports fans, to the Ultimate Cinematic Arena. I'm your host, Joe Walker, and this is the Champions of Cinema podcast. Fellow producer James Marshall and I are diving deep into the heart-pounding world of sports films, the victories, the defeats, and the unforgettable moments that make us cheer, cry, and believe in the power of the underdog. It's season 3 and time for something new, fresh, and exciting. The only question to ask ourselves is, can we go the distance on the full 9-movie Rocky cinematic universe?
I wonder how many films it'll take until we get sick of, like, some Stallone. I don't know. Hopefully not.
I don't think we will get sick of it. I think we're just going to be.
Will we get to Creed 2 and just think, fucking hell, it's really like the franchise just needed to just stop?
No, really. I just think maybe. I think what we'll find is that we become really aware of the character, especially Rocky.
Yeah.
And we'll be wondering how this person has developed so much over the course of 9 movies.
Yeah.
And is so different maybe over the course of 9 movies, but we'll see. Anyway, James, here's 5 reasons why people should watch Rocky.
Its character-focused approach sets it apart from many other sports movies.
It sparked a franchise which has made $1.8 billion so far.
It has the most iconic training montage and score in cinema history.
It might be the biggest underdog story ever committed to film.
It's had 10 Oscar nominations and has won 3, including the first sports movie ever to win Best Picture.
Absolutely. Fantastic reasons to watch Rocky, I think, from start to finish. And a little bit of information for you about Rocky before we get started, before I talk to you about what you've been watching recently. So it's made in 1976. It cost $1.1 million to make, so incredibly cheap. And it made $225 million.
That's given them the biggest ROEs in cinema history. Jesus Christ.
So officially that's an 11,000% ROI. Okay.
11,000% Bitcoin has
ROI.
that.
But I can tell you the only stocks that have been in that sort of region.
Okay.
Apple,
I was going to say,
has a bigger stock return than that. Netflix has a bigger stock return than that from its very start.
Enough. Okay.
Tesla, Amazon, and the underdog of all big stock changes, GameStop. James.
GameStop.
That's the only other one.
Let's go.
Rocky is the GameStop
the Rocky of the stock
market. Which is why when people think that why this movie has become so iconic in its sports movie history, because it made so much money out of what it shouldn't have.
The film itself
made out
was an underdog, which is in the cinema world, which is pretty cool. Yeah,
absolutely. But James, we have been off from podcasting for what feels like a month.
Yeah, could be around that. Yeah,
and so we're a little bit rusty. But I would like to know, in those 3 weeks since we last recorded, what have you been watching?
Squid Game. Yeah, you've watched Squid Game, right?
Yeah, I have.
Pretty good. I think it was nice. I watched The Matrix the other week as well.
Okay, just a casual rewatch.
Just a rewatch, and I think that film. Wow, I think that film isn't appreciated enough. Yeah. What about you? Anything else?
Just a bit of sort of Christmas TV, really. I watched a bunch of movies. Some stuff that was kind of fun. Some stuff that was old, some stuff that was new. I really enjoyed watching the NFL on Christmas Day for the first time.
That was so busy.
Cool.
We had games on Wednesdays, Thursdays, Saturdays, Fridays. That was sick.
Which is a joy for us as NFL fans, I think, really. I only very, very recently watched the new Wallace and Gromit and revelled in the joy of the return of Feathers McGraw as the greatest cinema
Penguin
bad guy potentially ever. Yeah,
he is good. I need to rewatch that. I love that. Wow, I didn't realize.
And just a bunch of new stuff, but nothing particularly that made me feel like this series is going to make me feel, I think, because this one has got some real, meat to how to, this is like 101 how to make sports movies and how to continue.
This is
to
the blueprint. I feel
character.
like you can't make a sports film that doesn't take some of the magic from these films. Really.
Whatever you do in making your sports film, you are going to use a trope from the Rocky series somewhere.
Absolutely. It's just
unless you're Martin Scorsese making Raging Bull 2 years after this.
So I guess like this is that was the anti-Rocky, right? So we will make sure we need to try and do some comparisons between this and the Raging Bull to an extent. That'd be nice.
That might work well
where we can.
Absolutely,
because that's what's great. They're both really good. We both love them. They're both Oscar winners, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, but they're just different,
very different.
I think Raging Bull was kind of like, damn, this is maybe too serious or too real to an extent. But I think this film isn't, just because it's different doesn't mean it's not unrealistic. I just think it's a different perception. It's just sort of like it sort of reflects what they prioritize. I think this film's maybe more about hope and dreams, whereas Raging Bull is maybe about kind of like looking at a couple stories about, look, this Rocky isn't every story, it's just a story which people want to listen to, because ultimately as humans we're drawn to feeling good, right?
Yeah, that one was a blockbuster because it was uplifting, and one was a blockbuster because it was not, the opposite of uplifting. It pulled you down to the ground and made you realise that, that these people are human at the end of the day. Which is always the interesting one. If Rocky had some sort of, if he'd hit Adrian maybe once or twice in the whole time, then that might have made a very different story. But it doesn't. James, with every single episode that we do, we ask you to try and sum up what's going to happen in the episode with a very short Japanese poem called a haiku. Would you like to talk us through your haiku?
Let's do it.
For this week, for Rocky 1.
Okay. Going the distance, size of heart over body, we all need a shot.
Do we all need a shot of HGH like Rocky had in the later films and had his heart made incredibly big? Yeah, absolutely.
Oh my god. God.
Yeah, a little shot of
that was the double
steroids.
entendre I was going for. Yeah, I always. Yeah. Sure.
Very true. I really like it. I think Going the Distance is ultimately just it could be the name of the movie, really.
Ooh.
If it wasn't Rocky. If it wasn't Rocky, it could have been called Going the Distance, and it would have been quite a way of looking at the whole movie.
It would be.
Because that's really what the whole story is about, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
Which is great. So, no, I love it. I love your haiku. Thank you very much for that. Really enjoyable. We've talked a little bit about the sort of stats for this already. IMDb has it rated as an 8.1, which seems low.
Yeah.
But I think is probably fair.
That would be more likely movie snobs just sort of maybe deducting points due to like Sylvester's acting, maybe the low budget feel of it. Like thinking about how like well made the Creed films were. I mean, if the Rocky was made, let's say it was still set in the 70s but made today. Fuck! Wow. I mean,
it would be incredible.
Some of the fighting in these films are a bit they aren't as well choreographed.
No, it's not the best choreographed, but that's because Sylvester Stallone choreographed the fights
exactly
in most of these movies.
But I think the essence and the soul of this film is just it's chef's kiss. I think it's fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I think that comes across quite nicely, and that's why Rotten Tomatoes has it as a 93 freshness rating.
I mean, the fact that the city of Philadelphia has basically taken on Rocky to be like
its son.
Its son.
Prodigal son,
It's like Rocky isn't Philadelphia. Philadelphia is Rocky to an extent, really. If you think about it. You think Philadelphia, its fans, it's always trying to take on that sort of image. Its alter ego is Rocky, essentially, right? Think about like the 2018 Super Bowl against the Patriots. It was the little team with a backup quarterback against, the Empire, against,
the
Patriot,
script
Oh, here we
idea.
go.
Wait a minute, James.
Money.
Let's have the Patriot team, the team that's got stars and stripes
Blue, white,
all
and
over
red,
their
stars
stuff.
and stripes. Oh wow, incredible.
The big braggadocious character beating up on the little Philadelphia guy. Interesting.
I've seen this before.
Interesting. Let's quickly just talk about who this was written and directed by. So we know very famously that this was written by Sylvester Stallone. He wrote it a few different ways. Originally, the script had Rocky throwing the fight and Mickey being a bitter old racist, which is not how this ended up. So it was directed by a guy called John G. Alvidson, who won the Oscar for Best Director as a result of it. Do you know anything else that he maybe directed, James?
Say his name again.
John G. Alvidson.
In that era as well, or did he end up making something much later?
80s, yeah.
Sports film?
Mm-hmm, yeah.
Have we done it yet? No. Probably
No.
No, I was going to say.
Not.
I don't know.
Okay. So, he famously directed Karate Kid 1, 2, and 3.
Okay.
Which kind of
Makes
shows
sense.
some similar reasons.
Yeah.
And he returned to the Rocky franchise to direct Rocky 5.
Sure.
Which is quite interesting.
All right.
So he did possibly the strongest Rocky film, but also maybe the weakest Rocky film as well. So, Sylvester Stallone came up with this idea after he'd watched Muhammad Ali fight, where he fought against a guy called the Bayonne Bleeder. I can't remember the actual full name, but in essence, just watched that fight and said, well, wouldn't this be perfect for a movie if, this guy went the distance? So came up with the Rocky story and sort of pitched it at another, he was doing an audition for a different movie that he didn't get, but pitched it to the producers of Rocky eventually, who wanted to try and had got $2 million to make the movie, but were looking for potentially some other actors to do the main character of Rocky. James Caan, a few other names sort of banded around, and then Stallone sort of said, "No, I don't want any of them. I'm doing it. I want to be the main character
Fair enough.
in this
I like
movie."
That.
And so, United Artists turned around and said, "Well, okay, that's fine," and the budget is now half. Yeah, it's 1.1. So we're going to really pull that budget down, which means that it's quite spectacular, really, that the movie is what
he
it
bet
is.
on himself, which you can respect, can't you?
Absolutely.
His career would have been much different had he not done that.
Yeah, 100% would have been a very, very different experience for sure. Okay, so let's get into the meat of this episode, James. Let's talk about the idea. So if you are listening to the Champions of Cinema podcast for the first time, we go through the movie in a 3-act structure because majority of stories that we follow will have a beginning, middle, and an end. And we talk through those structures, and then we talk something about those structures as we go through. So we're going to start off with Act 1, The Underdog's Life. The film introduces Rocky Balboa, a small-time boxer and debt collector in Philadelphia, living a modest and unfulfilling life. Rocky fights in rundown gyms and struggles to make a name for himself. Despite his tough exterior, Rocky has a kind heart, especially towards Adrian, a shy pet shop clerk. Over time, Rocky's persistent charm wins her over, and they begin a tentative romantic relationship. Meanwhile, heavyweight boxing champion Apollo Creed is seeking a new opponent after his scheduled match falls through. Eager to market an unusual fight, Apollo decides to offer a local, unknown, a shot at the title, branding it as a classic David versus Goliath story. To Rocky's shock, he is chosen for the match. Initially hesitant, he accepts the opportunity, realising it's his chance to prove his worth. Okay, let's talk about Rocky Balboa. Yeah. Okay. And I noticed that you've put down Rocky Balboa. That's his nickname. Do you know what his real first name is?
Fuck no. No clue. What is it?
Robert. He's Robert Balboa.
Does he ever get called Robert? Is it ever on like a... Is it ever...
Yeah, someone government names him at some point, and he's just like, this is bullshit. No, I don't think so. I think he's always just Rocky.
Sure.
But yeah, so Rocky Balboa, he's kind of in this movie, especially. We're going to cover a lot of Rocky over the next 9 movies and see how he develops over time. This movie, he really is a bum, and he's regularly used that phrase "bum."
He calls himself a bum. Other people call him a bum. He's just, his coach, the guy who becomes his coach calls him a bum. He's sort of just like, I don't know how old he is. He's meant to be at
30.
He's 30.
30, yeah.
So for a lot of athletes, if you haven't made it by the time you're 30, you're probably, thought of as washed, really, aren't you?
He's really on the
let the dream go.
He's really on the back end of the especially he's fighting for what turns out to be $40 to $60 whenever he fights in a local
for a win,
converted church. Against Spider Rico.
He gets $50 for doing one job, really, or something. Or I think what's the guy's name?
Gazzo.
Gazzo gives him
Gazzo,
a 20 just for
20. He gives him a 20
just for that one little job, which was just a shakedown, really.
If he'd broken his thumbs like he was supposed to, though,
probably
got
a
30.
50, exactly. Yeah, so I mean,
it's pretty good.
Yeah, he's the working class Italian American. He lives in Philadelphia. He's sort of a very, I guess there's probably lots of Rockies, and that's the idea, is that he's not a unique, what happens to him is unique, certainly, but he himself isn't necessarily like a special character, if that makes sense.
No, that's true.
I think
I would say that if we were characterizing Rocky as a female character, we would use the phrase "tart with a heart," kind of deal. There'd be somebody who's like there's a grittiness to them, but we haven't got quite the same level of I can't rhyme bum with a dream. But that's what he is really. He's a guy who wants to succeed and he wants to do the best. And he's a nice guy ultimately. He doesn't want to do the nasty things that he has to do. But he's kind of in the position where he doesn't have much to make his way through the world apart from his physical ability.
Yeah.
And
it's not even necessarily
poor comedic ability.
And a lot of the time it's his heart which gets him through, as opposed to his boxing ability, really, isn't it? His defining trait is determination, ultimately, isn't it? It's his perseverance.
Absolutely.
Even with the insurmountable odds, he pushes himself against Apollo. But then also, it's his kindness. Even when he's a debt collector, he's still kind. It's just that's the only job he can really do. Ultimately he has to make money because the boxing isn't doing enough. So it's like, okay, it's like he could have been a bouncer at a club, or be a deck, something which uses his size, really, and being.
But we see that in Rocky 2 when we get there next week, is that he has to go and work in the meatpacking company,
right,
to get himself through, just to make enough money.
Because it's like he's asked to break the guy's thumbs, but he's thinking, he's trying to justify his kindness by saying, well, look, it's like if I break his thumbs, how is he supposed to work? He's got to make money, right? But then that sort of Gazzo sort of says, that's not your job to think. I'm paying you to do as I say. So that's where we can see from there's some great exposition at the start of the film before outside of the ring, just to sort of see what his sort of morals are, what's his compass saying, what does he think, which is fantastic.
100%. Do you want to talk about his antithesis then at this point?
Apollo Creed.
Oh, possibly. I think Carl Weathers' magnum opus. I think this is where Carl Weathers, and I'm not saying that
not
Rocky
in
isn't
Mandalorian.
Stallone, so I think
you don't think
or
Dylan! Oh, that as well. Sorry, I thought you were going to say
Predator. No.
Yeah.
He's fantastic in everything. Predator as well, But I think this is where he there's so much of him in Apollo.
He knew,
that makes Apollo
he knew exactly what
ridiculously
he nailed
fantastic.
the role. It was the perfect. It's an antithesis which you kind of like. It's a weird one. He's not just like a boo. It's not like a Chick Hicks, which you just sort of write.
No, he's lovable. He's a lovable bad guy.
Yeah, he's great. He's charismatic. He's clearly a good showman. He's always using his charm and intelligence to sort of rouse the audience like a gladiator in the arena. He's sort of like
he's a true showman.
Yeah,
true showman.
He's sort of getting the crowd up. He's obviously clearly a very skilled boxer. And the idea to fight an underdog shows his marketing brilliance. There are plenty of athletes like this. You've got, he's clearly, like you mentioned, the fact that the Muhammad Ali fight was sort of the reason why this film was made. He is Muhammad Ali in this, really, isn't he?
He really is. Yeah, it's just a film depiction of Muhammad Ali for sure.
But it's like with all of these sort of villains, and this is a trope which we can maybe talk about later. It's his hubris and his focus on image is kind of maybe why the fight doesn't go his way, because he's probably thinking that Rocky isn't really fighting to win. He's just a placeholder to sort of put the
in Apollo's mind
on stage. Yeah,
for sure.
He's thinking like this is just like, he's not really thinking about the fight. He's just thinking about how can I make as much money from this as possible? How can we make this like a real spectacle to put on a show?
Well, if you think about it, there's that moment after the first round where Apollo goes, in the final fight, where Apollo goes to the corner and he kind of says to Duke, his main trainer, "Hey, this guy ain't playing around." This guy doesn't think this is an exhibition. He thinks this is a real fight.
Yeah, which that sort of makes
and he kind of realizes the trouble that he's got himself into.
Because he got knocked down like the first or second or something. I mean that
in the first round.
I mean, that alone is dangerous to his thing, and that's why it's kind of like, okay, like his trainer's like, look, I'm not going to get you hurt against this bum. But you better not stop. You're not stopping nothing. You're not stopping this fight. Because I need to put this guy down. So.
Yeah. Well, let's come back to that in a bit when we talk about Act 3.
Sure.
Let's go before we go to Act 2. I just want to give you a quick quiz.
Yeah.
And it's going to be a challenging one this week.
Oh, God.
So don't be afraid if you don't get all the answers right. And I would like to ask the simple question. This was made in 1976. It is now the 4th of January 2025. This movie is 1 year away from being 50 years old.
Which is insane.
Which is incredible. And so I'd like to ask you the question of, which characters or actors from the original movie are still alive today?
Right. Well, unfortunately, Carl Weathers is past us.
2024,
correct?
Yeah, so last year, yeah.
I haven't seen Adrian's actress around.
Talia is still alive.
She's still alive.
We know Talia Shire is still alive, yeah.
Mickey is passed, I imagine, because he was already old.
Yeah.
We know Sly is still around.
He is. So that's 2 of the 5 that I've got down here. Oh, sorry, 6 that I've got down. Or 7.
People that are still around.
There's only 7.
Paulie can't be around. No.
Nope.
What other?
So we have 3. We have the other. So they're the main characters. It's those 2, and then we have, in essence, 5 minor characters that are still around.
Who are them? I can't think of. Okay,
maybe Spider Rico is still alive.
I wasn't thinking about it. Okay, yeah, sure.
Played by Lavelle.
Yeah.
Stan Shaw, who plays Dipper Brown, is still alive. He's the guy who takes Rocky's locker.
Right. Okay.
And then Frank Stallone, who does the singing on the street corner, who's
oh wow,
Rocky's Sylvester's brother, is still alive. And then there are 2 characters who still live with Sylvester Stallone, who are still alive. So unfortunately, Stallone's dog Butkus didn't make it.
Oh yes, that was his actual dog, wasn't it, Butkus? Yeah.
But these 2 characters did.
The Turtles! No way! Oh, that's great.
Cuff and Link are still alive and still living with Stallone.
Probably, yeah, I mean, they'll still be a teenager in Turtle years. That's nuts. Wow.
I thought you might enjoy that.
Oh, that's nice. That's nice. Okay.
Tidbit. We got there eventually. Okay, so that's my little tidbit. Whilst we were talking about Carl Weathers earlier. I just wanted to pick this one up as well. That when Carl Weathers auditioned to be in the movie, he came in and auditioned with Stallone face to face, and they did some lines together, and then they got up and they said, "Oh, let's just do some shadow boxing against each other. You know, see how you look with moving, and see if you look like a boxer." And they did that, and Weathers punched Stallone in the face 3 times during his audition, and he was like, "Whoa, like calm down. You know, we're just auditioning here. We're just talking through it." And Weathers turned to the director and was like, "Well, you know, if you had a real actor here and not some sort of stand-in, I'd be fine, you know." And the director was like, "You know, so Sylvester is Rocky, and he's wrote the movie," and Weathers was like, "Maybe he'll get better. Maybe he'll get better."
So had he was already a star at this point, or?
Yeah, well, he finished his career in the NFL and was moving into being
forget he was
being an actor.
Yeah.
So
there we go.
Plenty of good stuff for Carl Weathers. But yes, a really fun little tidbit. Let's talk about Act 2. So talk us through that.
Yeah. Act 2, the training and transformation. Rocky begins rigorous training under the guidance of Mickey Goldmill, a veteran boxing trainer who initially doubted Rocky's potential but now believes in him. Mickey pushes Rocky to his limits, and the relationship evolves from one of mutual skepticism to a deep bond of respect and trust. As Rocky trains, he grows closer to Adrian, who becomes a vital emotional support for him. She helps him see himself as more than just a bum, inspiring him to push through the grueling physical and mental demands of preparation. The city buzzes with excitement over the upcoming fight, but Rocky's doubts linger. He confides in Adrian that he doesn't expect to win, but wants to go the distance with Apollo, something no one has ever done. For Rocky, the fight becomes more about self-respect than victory itself.
But yeah, let's talk about Mickey for a second,
and
his importance as a coach. Now, Mickey's not it's not normal in a sports movie where we see a coach like Mickey being somebody who is kind of not someone's coach at the start, but then becomes their coach later on. You know, and he sort of has a mission. There's a really poignant sort of scene where Mickey goes to visit Rocky, where after he's been offered the Apollo fight, and it could be seen as Mickey sort of trying to cash in maybe on Rocky's, you know, good fortune. But I think the reality is that Mickey realizes that he's made a mistake, and he says, "Well, I want to try and make something out of it." And there's a real there's a pair of moments of weakness there where Mickey sort of says, "Oh, you know, I'm 76 years old. You know, this is the last chance I've got to really help somebody achieve something," which is kind of powerful. And then Rock sort of just says, "No, I don't want you," and he leaves. And Rocky shouts at him down the stairs, and he's like, "This whole place stinks, you know, and you know, I didn't need your help before, and I don't need it now." That kind of sort of sentiment, and then comes to his senses and chases Mickey out and says, "Oh, you know what? Actually,
I do need to go in my own corner. I can't just do this all by myself. I need some structure." Yeah,
absolutely. Which
if
is really
if I'm
cool
going to do this, I need to do it right. You know, I need to follow a process, which Mickey has.
Absolutely. And so Mickey's got this wonderful experience of being the character where he's that symbol of perseverance, redemption, and second chances. He is that because, you know, we are all staring down the barrel of becoming Mickey in our own lives, where you've squandered your chances, you've been beat up by the process and the system. And Mickey says it really nicely, I think in either in movie 2 or movie 3, where he has that speech where he says, you know, you sort of wonder why you're still living around here. You've lost your friends and you don't know what the point of doing this anymore is. And that's what Mickey shows in all 3 movies. And he mirrors Rocky in that sort of purpose throughout the movie, right?
Yeah.
And that's why he's so good.
I love Mickey because it's like he's not necessarily wrong in the reasons why he didn't like Rocky. You know, if you think about being a boxing coach and you've got dozens of guys around you, and you're trying to figure out like, right, who are I've got a gym here. Who are the guys that I'm going to invest my time and effort to? Is it going to be a guy who is, you know, a debt collector, or is it a guy who's just there to box? You know, you can relate to this as a coach. Like, you want to invest into guys who are purely focused on the task at hand, which is boxing, right? Guys,
or at least they have an ability that you can see, an innate ability, and this is where we come down to that coach-athlete relationship again, where we talk about closeness and commitments and complementarity. Rocky and Mickey aren't close in who they are, but they become close. They complement each other quite nicely. But when Rocky's debt collecting and not taking boxing seriously, he's smoking, he's not really taking his training seriously. Mickey's got no time for him because they don't meet each other's same level of commitment.
Yeah, because as a coach,
they're not as complementary.
As a coach, you want to know that everything that you're putting into this guy is worth it, and that it's going to mean something, right? It's going to translate into results. And for a long time, you didn't think that was the case with Rocky. And they're both right to an extent, really. It's their paths just hadn't been aligned. But now that Rocky has a shot at the title and Mickey wants to coach a guy with a shot at the title, now their paths can finally come together, which is great, I think.
Yeah, and that's much more prevalent in the second movie, I think, because the second movie really develops on that character relationship. But the first movie's a good way of showing you what was happening and what can happen if you're just willing to commit to each other in a way that a coach-athlete relationship should do. And that's hard. I've been through plenty of coach-athlete relationships where the commitment isn't there between two people, between you and the athlete. But I have had some where, when you do get that commitment, it means that you get every opportunity to thrive and have success. Because you can be honest with each other.
And sometimes that perception of the coach from the athlete, or the athlete from the coach, sometimes it's a misconception. Sometimes it's 100%. It's just how you view the other person, and maybe you don't know the full story. It's like, well, I've had to do this because this has happened. It's like, okay, that's fine, but where I'm at right now, I need someone who can do this. So for right or for wrong, I'm going to support you, or I'm not going to support you. So it's 100%. It's great. It's not a simple case of like, I'm good enough to have your coaching, or it's a case of like, well, can you handle my coaching? Can you?
Oh yeah,
right.
Especially. Yeah.
And that's huge.
that's the honesty. There's an honesty to coaching that is excellent, and that's something that I've always loved about coaching, is that you can lay the truth out to somebody and you can say, this is the truth of the situation. The challenge with that is both parties need to be able to understand that truth and accept that truth, regardless of how hard it is. Sometimes, like this one, Rocky feels like he's been let down by Mickey because, Mickey's, moved him out of his locker and isn't putting any time or effort into him until he's interested in him, until he sees that he's got an opportunity in front of him. And that's why Rocky feels like he's being let down, whereas Mickey feels like he's being let down because Rocky's not putting the same amount of effort in to his training at the start. So those are really important things to identify. And you can have, like you say, you can have that miscommunication all the time through a coach-athlete relationship. And I've definitely had those where you haven't necessarily seen eye to eye until eventually there's been a truth, openness and honesty where you can say, we both want the same thing here. And the reality is that as long as we're both willing to put the effort in, we can achieve our goals together.
Yep.
I love Mickey. I think he's brilliant. The other coach that we'll just touch on really quickly now is Duke Evers, who is the Apollo's coach.
Guy, yeah.
And just really a quick one on him, because we're going to see Duke throughout all of the initial Rocky movies. So anything with the title Rocky, Duke is in it. He's in all of them. And he ends up being Rocky's coach eventually. But he is different to Mickey because he's not about heart. He's about the smarts when it comes to coaching. Ooh. He understands that that there's a professionalism, a perceptiveness, and a sort of being aware of what's happening that's important for success. And I think that's different to the heart that Mickey provides. And almost really, if you're in a good coaching environment, you would have coaches that provide you with both of those things. So you'd have a coach who's like, here's the technical element of what we need to do, and here's how we're supposed to do it, and here's the professional way of getting there. But you'd also have a heart coach who says to you, this is why we need to do it. And the best coaches can do both, but it's really difficult to achieve both all the time. Absolutely. So that's a really nice thing. He's cool. We're going to talk a lot about Duke over the next few weeks, definitely. But not to sort of dissuade us away from I would say possibly if there's a main character in this movie, it's obviously Rocky, and then there's the main antagonist, but then there's Adrian, who's super important to the relationship of Rocky as well, because in Act 2 we get that moment where Rocky takes Adrian out on the date. They go for the ice rink, ice skating on Thanksgiving, and then eventually they get their romantic moments of kissing and all those kinds of things. And that relationship for Rocky is transformative because before Adrian's around, he's kind of angry, lost, unsure about where he's going, but Adrian provides him a touchstone. She becomes his rock in essence, without using too much of a pun, to being the person that he can go back to, and she can support him. And she's fantastic because not only does she go from being kind of mousy and not outwardly attractive to she goes within the whole movie. Over the course of the movie, she goes to being incredibly attractive, incredibly confident, and able to really show Rocky that he deserves everything that he's trying to aim for.
Rocky
right?
sees beauty in Adrian, who doesn't see that beauty in herself.
100%.
It's like why are you so into Adrian? She's quiet. She's pushing 30, which at the time was probably maybe considered a bit old. I'm not sure. We talk about how in nowadays it's much more normal for women after 30 to be in their kind of find their match mode, whereas at the time it would have been much earlier. So pushing 30, I guess, was considered old. But Rocky sees beauty in her and helps Adrian find that herself, which is great. So they both, like Rocky says, like they both, they filled each other's gaps in terms of what they needed to make the better versions of themselves, which is ultimately what you need in a partner, right? You need someone who not only you like and that you're attracted to, but also makes you the best version of yourself, which they both do to each
100%.
other fantastically. So,
and what's interesting in that is that she has that glow up, doesn't she? Throughout, like in the second act, she turns up at his house with the dog and wearing her new beautiful red coat that she's wearing, and she's sat on his stoop, and as if to say, "I'm here now, and I'm with you, and I want to, this is you're the most important central thing to me." She doesn't understand the importance of not banging Rocky whilst he's in training. Unfortunately, she's still desperate for a bit of action. But Rocky puts her straight and lets her know it's not about her. It's about the fact that he can't perform the way he wants to if he's being sexually active, which is I think is a really interesting thing. It's often shown in boxing movies. It was in Raging Bull, for example, as well. Yeah, about that sort of stuff.
They need to sort of remove distractions, remove sort of pleasantries. Let's say whether that's in diet or activities. They need to sort of do. Does this help me in the ring? It gets to the point where they have to cut off everything that doesn't add to their performance. And
absolutely.
And I think some boxers probably didn't care about that. They were probably like, look, I'm just gonna. For maybe I need stress relief, and maybe like having intimate moments with a partner helps with that. But
what, like Apollo?
Perhaps. I'm not sure.
Having a kid that wasn't with his wife.
Ooh. Yeah, maybe that. But
it's going to come round to bite him in the ass later, isn't it?
Yeah, foreshadowing there. But also, like, with some athletes feel like they need to sort of get into a certain mindset and need to simplify their life to an extent in order to like put themselves in the best shape possible for competing, both mentally and physically.
Do you think it's interesting how the kiss between Rocky and Adrian sort of almost transforms them magically? They become almost completely different. There's that point where the kiss happens, and then after that, there's a transformation.
They needed each other, really. They needed to like for different reasons. Maybe they needed each other, and like they both complemented each other, and they both sort of developed as people as a result of that. So it's like very much so Adrian as a character is what makes this film so accessible. Like you don't necessarily have to be purely a sports guy to to watch Rocky because of her. Like you can be, she makes this film a kind of like a love story.
It is a love story. Yeah, 100%.
Completely
a love story.
Without completely diminishing. We've seen some films where they add a romance element and it sort of completely dilutes the sports in the film. Whereas this is a good balance. This is fine.
Yeah, so this does like sports I guess it would be.
So.
It's it's like a rom-com for men. It's what we want out of that. Like, we want a classy, demure kind of girl. I don't know if those are the right words even, but
I respect the effort.
She's not
trying to use Gen Z language, but yeah, go on.
She's not a hoe, she's not out there hoeing herself out, is
right.
She's
it's
not giving
a lustful relationship. It's an emotional one as much as that.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. It helps.
It's very different.
It enhances,
and that's almost
quality, if anything.
She almost embodies everything that the majority of men in society want out of a girl.
Mm-hmm.
Like, she's not been with anybody else. She's a virgin. She's shy. She's but she's beautiful. And for him particularly, she's not the object of everybody's lust and stuff, which is kind of what a lot of men want.
She's the diamond in the rough, I suppose. She's sort of like, I didn't think I'd find someone like this. So like maybe a beauty which no one else sees as well, which is sort of makes it more genuine, right? They're not done Raging Bull who, like, he picked out the girl that everyone was fantasizing about, and look how that turned out, So
it's kind of strange, isn't it? It's a really different way of looking at things. But I've just having talked about that just then and saying it really does feel like this is if you ask a guy what's your favourite romance movie, this might even come up for a guy, because it's like, what's
the romantic relationship which you appreciate the most, or maybe that you sort of think is like, what was the relationship you'd like, maybe, if not specifically with Adrian necessarily, but like what relationship would you like to mirror, in your own life?
Maybe you're just looking for love in all the wrong places, James. Maybe you haven't been down to your local pet shop recently.
Yeah.
And started taking girls' glasses off, like take a glass. No, it doesn't work. Yes, sometimes you're like, oh no, definitely not. She's got those glasses for
a guy to keep an ice rink open longer. That sort of gesture.
We're going to talk about Act 3, which is our culmination of the Rocky movie, and let's go into that now. So Act 3, the fight and the triumph of spirit. The climactic fight takes place on New Year's Day, with Apollo initially underestimating Rocky's determination and toughness. The match is brutal and evenly matched, both fighters landing powerful blows. Rocky's grit and refusal to quit shock the crowd and Apollo, who begins to take him seriously as a formidable opponent. In the final round, Rocky, battered but unrelenting, summons every ounce of strength that he has left. The fight ends in a split decision, with Apollo retaining the title. However, Rocky achieves his goal of going the distance, earning the respect of Apollo, the crowd, and most importantly, himself. As the arena erupts in chaos, Rocky ignores the announcement of the winner and calls out for Adrian, who rushes to him. In a tender and triumphant moment, they profess their love for each other, underscoring that Rocky's true victory lies in his self-belief and the relationship he has built. Kind of touching, right?
It's fantastic, yeah.
He's got his championship belt, and that is his pride and her.
Yeah, when the fight ended, it wasn't like who won or lost. It was like, for him, he had already done it. Like, he made it to the end. He went the distance. And then he's just like, who did he talk about going the distance with? Adrian. So now he wants to share that moment with Adrian, So, because, they're announcing like, this judge scores the win to Apollo. And it's like, they're gradually announcing that he's won the fight, but he's not even paying attention to that.
And normally that would be the moment.
Everyone's in, like, trying to ask him, like, when's the rematch? When's going on? Because it's just like, they've all got their jobs to do, right? They're all about media coverage. They got asked certain questions, script, but he's not interested in that. He's never been interested in that. He didn't want to get interviewed in the meat shop. He just wanted to get on with this fight. He wanted to put himself in the best position possible to go the distance. He wasn't thinking about, how do I sell my brand? How do I make a name for myself which sticks in this industry? I wasn't a concern for him. That sort of, happens I guess that happens maybe more in the second film, which we know.
That's why that movie's so much different and so much
Yeah.
more. It's almost got its own level of specialness because Rocky realizes he's kind of the second movie is about fame and how fame is fleeting.
Continuing the journey, like it's actually like it doesn't necessarily have to stop at once you've gone the distance. Like you can actually you were good enough to actually like put the champ down and go the distance.
Yeah.
So if you got that far with a couple weeks of training, imagine what you can do with more time. You know,
and chasing chickens.
Right.
And Gracie, fast lightning speed. You know, and fighting with the wrong hand. Sure. That's all that's going to matter in the second movie. Interestingly, we talked about this earlier. I just wanted to come back to it. So Rocky does knock Apollo down in the first round. Now, the rules of boxing state that the referee cannot start counting the count until a boxer's in the corner that he's sent him to. Rocky doesn't go to that corner when he knocks Apollo down. He actually knocks Apollo down and he starts walking around, which means that the referee's not allowed to start the 10 count to say that Apollo's out.
Right.
And actually, if Rocky had just gone to the corner that he'd been told to go to, he would have won.
Right.
In a first round knockout.
But I guess it's just like that kind of sudden, like, what the fuck? I've just knocked down Apollo. He's like, what do I do? You know, it's kind of like that fight or flight response, maybe, where it's like almost like an MMA. You kind of want to go in for the kill sort of thing. It's probably thinking like, oh, did he just stumble? Is he actually down? Like, it's just a lot of, yeah. But that could all, you know, I don't know. Maybe I'm over deeping it. Maybe it was an error in the director's.
No, I think it's meant to be shown in that way that Rocky's so overwhelmed by the moment that he doesn't realize what he has to do.
Sure.
His process as a boxer has sort of just gone out the window for a second. And that's when that sort of the whole thing becomes that further on is he fights through the fight without being very much he's not using his senses very much. He's just using his, you know, his face is his shield kind of thing, you know. Kind of deal. And then, you know, even when Mickey's telling him to stay down after he gets knocked down later on in the fight, he just wants to get back up. So it's all about, you know, he's not using his brain in this fight very much at all, which is quite interesting. So yeah, that was quite interesting to talk about. Music. I just want to talk about music a bit.
Yeah.
In this third act. Now, there's a couple of important things about the music for this. So, Gonna Fly Now, which is the main Rocky sort of training montage music,
going up the steps,
actually made it to number one in the United States for 1 week. Yeah, actually made it to the charts number one. But I think the piece of music that is
probably
us,
one of the most commonly used songs in anyone's like gym playlist, right?
You
know, run playlist especially. It's kind of like right, I need a song to run to. Like, what am I going to think of? Oh, you know, that, you know, it's perfect.
Yeah, if you haven't lived since 1976 and at least tried to run even a short distance with the Rocky music either being made by your own mouth trumpet or by you listening to it as you run, then you haven't lived the human experience, in my opinion. You need to,
right? Yeah.
You need to have a time when you run to that music. It's very important. But the more important piece of music is Going the Distance and how well Bill Conti made that work, right? So that build of the 10th round where it's this whole, you know, slow rise of what's really the outcome. And the piece of music's strange because it builds itself up and actually crescendos at the end of the fight. But the real sort of celebration music is post-fight, even though he's lost.
Well, it was weird as well because like they played Going the Distance, and at times like the crescendo, like with him getting knocked down in the like you mentioned in the 14th, then they use it again in the 15th. There's almost a sense of like, okay, the song is so good, like we need to use it more than once, and maybe they didn't have another song to put in, so they're just like, okay, let's use this because I think generally in films now, you'd probably just save that. They'd probably have another song, which they use for like the knockdown or whatever. Or sometimes they don't use any songs. It's kind of like, it's the silence, right? It's kind of like knockdown. kind of like that muffled. So everything is distorted.
High pitched whine. Yeah.
High pitched whine of getting stunned. Whereas this was because this was a cheaper film. They didn't have that kind of tech yet. So,
but that runs throughout all of the Rockies, right? So I think Rocky 2 doesn't have anything new when it comes to music. I think it almost has the same music. I don't think it has a different. But Rocky 3, is when Eye of the Tiger is used. Rocky 4, we get the most ridiculous soundtrack of a sports movie ever, which is beautiful.
Yeah.
Burning Heart, and a few other interesting songs that are being used there as well. But this is kind of perfect for me when it comes to the music that's being used in that scene. The shots are excellent. It's at the Philadelphia Spectrum, which doesn't physically exist anymore, so it's shot really well. That whole thing of the Rocky was, the posters are made wrong with the shorts are the wrong color for Rocky. Rocky was supposed to be wearing red shorts originally and then they switched it to being white shorts, and then they were like, oh no, now we haven't updated the posters, and apparently Stallone, with a lot of the things in the movie, it was just a case of the director just said to Stallone, just use it right now, use it, use that pain and that anxiety, that problem. Really fantastic use of the underdog story. There's a couple of things I just want to pick up whilst we're going through this before we move on. So, ice rink scene originally was supposed to be 300 extras in the ice rink scene with Adrian. They couldn't afford them, so that's why it's a one-on-one scene, very differently. The steps shot is often sort of said to be a first ever use of Steadicam in movies, which it was actually the third film that ever used Steadicam.
Like a gyroscope of some kind.
Yeah, so that whole, it doesn't shake as you're doing it.
Okay.
And that's quite important, really. And then that I don't think I can beat him scene was nearly cut out of the movie because they didn't have the time to do it. And apparently it was insisted on by Stallone. Stallone said, no, we have to have that scene. It's really important to the makeup of the movie. And he did it in one take. And then they moved on because they didn't have the time or constraints. So really, I'll try and put those back into the episode.
This might be cut, but when I was watching this film, I was thinking, like, I wonder if in that running scene, if it exists like an actual map of like a Rocky run, like taking.
Oh, I'm sure there is.
If you're able to piece together, if you can identify the real locations of Philadelphia, going from like the street he starts in to the steps, and then a bit of in between. If you can create like a path.
I don't think there's a path. No,
that would be really cool.
Because
like the Rocky run, and you just do that one time. Listening to the soundtrack. That'd be really cool.
The way that it worked was, though, the on location shots in Philadelphia were only shot over 5 days. Only shot over 5 days. So everything on location was only shot in 5 days. And when they did all the running shots, they did it in a day where they had a van and they just drove around Philadelphia and told Stallone to get out and run.
That's the thing.
And they would just
it might be a bit disjointed. It'll just be like, well,
yeah,
if we're here, then we're there.
This looks good here. That looks good there.
Sure.
And apparently
there's
two
that
steps
bit like next to the river, which is like that's really cool.
With the boat. Yeah. And they were just, all those moments were just apparently like, they just spent a full day where it was like, get out and run, get out and run, get out and run. And it's apparently he was dead by the end of it.
Sure.
Stallone was just like, I'm dying here.
Sure.
The steps runs were actually done only 2.5 hours apart. So he did the first step run where he was going really slow and struggling. And then 2 hours later, when the sun had come up, they did the sprint up the stairs. Yeah.
Which is perfect.
Which is kind of cool, really. Yeah.
It's like there's like two levels to a montage. You want a montage. Some people just do a montage where they just like sort of wedge together different like action moments. But then I think the best montages are the ones which actually show growth within it.
Oh yeah.
Doing let's say repeating two activities, but the first time you struggle with it and the second time is like you're way better at it. Which sort of leads on nicely to our trope section, or we could, for this film, we can call it this film is the trope father. It's the.
I like it. Yeah.
It's the trope father, right? It's like because I think this what makes this film really have its resonance in not just sports cinema but cinema in general is the sort of lasting effects and sort of the repeated uses of certain tropes that this film probably I don't know if they maybe invented them. We sort of discussed that perhaps the montage was made by Rocky, but if not, it was certainly popularized by Rocky. Absolutely,
or at least it's the first time that we can remember as being super important and central to the story.
Exactly. So I think there are some really good tropes that are worth talking about. First of all, obviously, is the underdog story. A seemingly ordinary or disadvantaged protagonist who overcomes significant odds to achieve personal success, often earning respect rather than outright victory. So we get that in The Karate Kid, who it was the same director as Rocky. You've got Cool Runnings, Jamaican bobsled team, defying stereotypes, competing in the Winter Olympics. Maybe not winning the Winter Olympics, but certainly get the respect of the people there. Eddie the Eagle,
finishing, going the distance.
Eddie the Eagle. These are all stories which we love as people because it makes us think that actually, maybe we are Rocky. Maybe we can be this underdog. Maybe we can find some inspiration in these stories. Another trope, the gruff mentor. Now, this maybe isn't wasn't made by Rocky, but I think now I love to refer back to classic stories, from history, like Hercules again. Philoctetes.
Well, you mean Hercules from the Disney perspective?
Well, maybe that's the thing. Maybe so Disney took the Rocky trope and then they took the characters from history and said, let's put that trope in the characters of history, because really, Philoctetes, the half man, half goat, is Mickey in this story. He is. And you've also got, again, Mr. Miyagi in The Karate Kid. You've got Clint Eastwood in $1 Million Baby. The gruff mentor, the harder, no-nonsense mentor who trains a protagonist, sometimes using unconventional methods, delivering tough love. These are all if so many of the films that we've done have had this trope in it.
100%.
Doc Hudson, Bleed for This. We've got Aaron Eckhart, sort of that role as well. It's it's great, and you obviously got the training.
Do you think there's many characters out there, people maybe, or characters in who are living their own movie in their own life, that their main stumbling block is they never had a Mickey?
Yes. Yeah. Maybe
it's like they've got everything that they needed apart from a mentor to show them how to do it. Whilst you all need a Mickey, I'm sort of reading ahead in your notes a little bit, but you also need the romantic support system, right?
Yeah, exactly. And that's like another trope, really, isn't it? With Adrian has her quiet strength and has that support to maybe give Rocky confidence that he lacks in himself. And it's like you don't need to. Sometimes it's like you don't need to be a boxing expert to give someone boxing advice. Because perhaps you're just seeing it from your point of view, the doubt and stuff, and maybe someone else is seeing. Well, I know how much you care about boxing. I know how much you give into it. I don't see why you can't show the world that you're serious about this. And that you that kind of imposter syndrome where you feel like you don't belong in a certain scenario. Sometimes you need that bit of support from people which care about you to say, no, you do belong here, because it's not lying, it's not being kind for the sake of being kind. Sometimes it's genuine, and ultimately that paid off for Rocky. And that's an excellent trope. It's like, and sometimes it's like that's in a sports movies which have romance. Sometimes we talk about some films with romance and it feels like it dilutes the sport, but very much so it helps here.
100%.
Yeah, I mean, and finally, I think the other trope worth mentioning is the arrogant rival. And these are the films which, these are the protagonist's cocky opponent, dismissive, often serves as a foil to the hero's humility and work ethic. It's like having that nice juxtaposition between two characters, whether you've got, we had Cars, with him and Chick Hicks.
Chick Hicks, yeah.
You've got Talladega Nights, sorry, with the Ballad of Ricky Bobby. John Garrard is sort of Ricky Bobby's foil, Karate Kid.
Ricky Bobby.
Exactly, and then you've got the Karate Kid again, Johnny, who's the cocky, brash opponent of I forgot the kid from Karate Kid.
Danny LaRusso.
Danny, yeah, the foil to Danny. It's like, the bowling film that we did a couple of weeks ago.
Mm-hmm.
You have to have. I think the arrogant rival is huge, and what's great is that there are always arrogant rivals in sports and real life, and perhaps Muhammad Ali was the birth of that. That kind of
possibly
that kind of character within sports, which sort of take on that sort of villain role
that we have recorded.
They
definitely.
like to be the
that we have recorded,
exactly.
Definitely.
Yeah.
I wonder whether or not if you went back to gladiatorial times and watched them, whether or not they had a great talking gladiator who was always like, "Ooh, yeah, look how great I am."
Ooh, and they're just like, "Yeah, come on, give it to me." And if, to be honest, like looking at the
all your slaves want me. That's right.
I saw a map today. It was, when people do like who's rooting for who. So it'd be like two teams, and then it's like, well, the example is it was the AFC Championship in 2018, Patriots versus Chiefs, and it's like, okay, by state, who's rooting for who, and it's like the entire map was rooting for the Chiefs because everyone was so sick of the Patriots. Yeah. Now it's flipped. Everyone's rooting against the Chiefs, and when you hear, especially Kelsey, because Kelsey's got some swagger. Obviously, he's got a lot of personality. He's definitely likes that role of, these guys when they get to the top, they like to be the villain to an extent. That everyone is like counting them out. Everyone's rooting against them. They use that. They harness that energy to sort of, propel themselves forward.
Well, that's the only way of being, isn't it? There's only two. You're on one side of the coin or the other. Where you either see yourself as the underdog fighting through, the doubt of everybody, or you see yourself as the king on the throne who needs to be dethroned.
Right.
And it will happen. Everybody knows that dethroning has to happen eventually, and it will happen eventually.
But not today.
But not today. Yeah,
Exactly.
Not today. And they're all against us, and I'm going to show them how I can continue to hold my crown for as long as possible. Mm-hmm. Really, really kind of important. I want to ask you about Arrogant Rival.
Sure.
And I want to ask you about Apollo as a antagonist. Is he hateable?
Not really.
If we take just this movie in its isolation, we know so much because we know so much.
Yeah,
with the extraneous.
Let's not think about Rocky 2, 3, and 4. Yeah, let's just think about Rocky.
Is
1.
he a figure of hate in Rocky 1? And you're like, oh God, I want him to
not
beat
really,
that guy.
because he represents so much more than just himself. He represents really in this film the whole commercial aspect of the sport. And
do you think at the time in 1976 he might have been more hateable?
Yes,
where
I think
with where the world was, and the fact he's this black, arrogant, athlete.
Sure.
Do you think that maybe that it's just changed over time because of our perception of who he is as a human being?
Very possible.
And that we actually now, because we've spent so much time around arrogant athletes that we kind of like, that they are. We just see, well, all Apollo's doing here is he's just promoting the fight. He's just doing his best to make the most money.
He likes to. Rocky's just sort of like, right, get in the ring, fight. He's not really thinking about. Well, we see later on maybe he takes on the showman stuff a bit, but like
he's a little bit rude at times. During the press conference, he's rude. During but it's not like he's really overbearingly terrible.
He's never been a bad sportsman. He's not like tried to cheat. He's always played by the rules.
That's a good point.
So
I wonder if we'd had Apollo doing some of those underhand tactics of being the villain from a cheating perspective, whether or not that would give us a different opinion of Apollo. And maybe if Apollo hadn't have stuck around for the later movies. But that's why we love him so much. That's why he makes it into the 4.
Yeah.
Of these, because actually we do love him.
And sort of the basis, the link with the extension of the Rocky franchise into Creed, right? It's sort of like, like his legacy sort of went on beyond, the Rocky films.
I'm really interested in getting to those movies because I don't think I've seen any of the Creed movies properly all the way through. Like,
you sort of watch them as like entertainment, whereas you watch Rocky films as like, masterpieces, as
art. Which brings us actually quite nicely into the question that I want to ask you, and that is this movie art or is it entertainment?
Art. Yeah, it's an art. It's art because it's like every character has a purpose, and that they're trying to carry something, and ultimately it's like no film, a film that has the gravitas like Rocky does and the influence it has in culture, it has to be considered art because it's the way it's birthed tropes, the way it's personified the culture of whether that was already in Philadelphia or not. The Philadelphia embodies Rocky. It's absolutely art. Yeah.
Was it made as art?
No.
That's why it's so perfect.
That's why it's so perfect.
Because it wasn't. I think about it a bit like, I think Rocky is a bit like those cave paintings I think it's in France somewhere, where somebody's just been like, I'm just gonna do something, and because I'm passionate about, I want to do this, I want to paint these bulls and stuff up on the wall, and we see them, when they were there were people who were like, oh yeah, nice representation of you killing that bull.
That is a mammoth. Yep.
Or whatever it was. Yeah, exactly. And then we now go, oh my God, they're so beautiful, they're perfect, they're amazing. And at the time, it kind of doesn't matter, right? It was never made to be art. It was made to be just something. It was just made to capture something. But the reality is it turned into art over time.
Yes.
We appreciate it more and more as art. It grew into being art, which is brilliant. I want to agree with that. It is art. It's 100% art. But whilst it was made to be a movie, it has transcended its purpose of being just a movie, which is perfect to me. A question for you on memorabilia lane. And is there anything in this movie that you would want to take with you as memorabilia?
In this film, just Rocky 1?
Can I introduce you to some turtles, maybe?
Turtles. I like Rocky's hat, I find is very iconic.
Rocky's hat?
That hat.
What about Adrian's hat that she loses and then that's all he's bothered about when he gets where's your hat?
Not that one so much, but that. Because his trunks aren't very, they're quite plain. No. They're not like those
Apollo's,
stars and stripes we see. Yeah, so maybe those.
Apollo's trunks. Yeah, I'd love Apollo's trunks.
I'm going to go with Apollo's trunks. Because you see that, you instantly think Rocky. Yeah, it's great.
Yeah. Okay, that's cool. I really love it. And then I've got a question. I think we did this last time, but I want to do it again this time. And we're talking about best lines and the best line in the movie. Do you have an opinion of what the best line in the movie is, or the one that what's the most quotable for you? Hey, your buggers!
Just Adrian. I don't know. Or,
when it's just shouted Adrian. Adrian! You're Adrian! I did it!
Yeah, maybe that.
Yeah, maybe. I think the best line in the movie is, because all I want to do is go the distance.
Yeah.
Nobody ever gone the distance against Creed. And if I can go the distance, you see, maybe that bell rings and I'm still standing. And I'm not going to know for the first time in my life, see, that I wasn't just another bum from the neighborhood.
I like that. Yeah,
that's really, he's able to measure that he's achieved his, kind of like his life's purpose at that point. It's really interesting. I watched some bits of stuff about this, and I'm really lucky that I've got this. I'm actually holding the Sylvester Stallone Rocky Anthology, which is all of the Rocky movies all the way through to 5. It doesn't have Rocky Balboa on it, and it doesn't have the Creeds. But it, there's got some nice documentaries on there. It's got some DVD commentaries and stuff like that. And one of the things that was on there is Stallone talks about how he wanted the final shot of the movie to be Rocky in his ultimate moment, which is he's gone the distance, he's got his girl, and that is his pinnacle. He will never reach any higher than that.
Yeah. Do you remember?
Because I think for Stallone, he was concerned maybe that this was the one movie he was going to be able to make, that was going to be his movie that he'd written, and that almost it was an allegory for his experience in Hollywood. Now, It turned into something more, just like Rocky's career turns into something more. But in that moment, I think he wanted to just say, this was my peak. And so, James, we always ask this at the end of every episode. What rating are you giving Rocky?
It's a champion. This is a champion. This is maybe the greatest sportsman of all time. This is the godfather of sports tropes. I think, like, you know, the amount of films which homage to this in different ways, whether it's through montages or, you know, creating iconic soundtracks. I think this is the sports film which started the sports film genre, truly. And it's not just a champion, it could be arguably the champion of sports films.
I would agree. I would actually say that there might be a way of us categorizing this as a champion, but being one of the most elite champions, and that would be that it could be seen as a GOAT champion.
Yeah.
It could be one of, like, a top 5 GOAT champion.
Sure.
You know, it's absolutely a champion of cinema.
Mount Rushmore.
But I think it hits Mount Rushmore. It does, yeah, it's up there. It's either top 4, top 5, you know, all time.
Absolutely.
Because it's so special. And because of what it began. You know, how many sports films have had 9 films made because of it? Okay, brilliant. Ultimate magnum opus. That brings me to the end of my points for this and the very first sort of episode of season 3. If you've enjoyed watching this, if you've had a good time doing it, then please like, rate, review, subscribe. You know, give us a follow on all of the social medias. Where can they follow us, James?
On Champions of Cinema on TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube.
Fantastic. And please, if you like something about this, give us a comment on YouTube or give us a comment on the Spotify page. We love to hear what you've got to tell us about Rocky and your experiences with this first movie. And because we'd love to continue, we'd like to respond to anything you've got to say. In the next episode, we'd like to hear what
let us know your going the distance moment, please. Yeah,
that sounds like a really good one. James, thank you for that. It's really appreciated and really enjoyable. We'll be back next week, episode 2.
Yeah,
Rocky 2.
Rocky 2.
Time for some black and yellow Rocky, which is much more. You know, it starts building a bit more purpose about himself.
We've got a solid foundation now for a $1.8 billion franchise.
I think we've got lots of enjoyment. I'm concerned about how this one's going to go. Is it going to peak at 4? You think 4's the best, right?
I have it 4 as I think Rocky's the best film, and it's like it could have just ended at 1. I think there's enough there where it's like that's a nice ending, but I do also appreciate the sequels. You know, I think and it's nice they did a good job building on the character. 4 just has like I enjoy 4 a lot just because it's like it's, you know, it's patriotic, but not in a, I'd say in like a not as arrogant and in your face maybe as Top Gun, for example. I thought it's like I just think I think it's Rocky at its peak in terms of like the ideas and the impact Rocky can have in the world now, not just in boxing but on the world. I think it's a cool exploration of that, but we'll wait. Well, you know, that we'll talk more about that when we get to it.
I'm excited. I think it's going to be good fun. I'm going to just quickly though. We're going to leave you with this. I don't think that 4 is the best Rocky.
That's fair enough.
I think 3 is the best Rocky.
3 is the best Rocky. Now that is outrageous. You know,
I know. I'm going to cut you off there, James, because I can decide when this podcast starts and ends. Thank you, everybody, for listening to the Champions of Cinema podcast. We will be back next week with another episode. James, thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
No worries. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.